look in professional wrestling is really important. Go back to the 80s when everyone was wearing tassels and someone came out bright yellow. You'd be like, oh my gosh, who is that person? And this is why you always need to be thinking about it. This goes for your whole career as well, because at some point you may go, hi, I need to change this up. And when you do, you don't want to get it wrong. Otherwise, nerds and geeks like me are going to look at you and go, well, what the flubbins is that? My name is Simon Miller, and we're about to tackle this right now because, yes, this is 10 bizarre times wrestlers changed up their looks. Thanks for coming. Please subscribe, and let's go. Number 10, Randy Savage. The Macho Man Randy Savage, 9 times out of 10, was absolutely great. He proved that in the 80s, he proved that in the 90s, he re-proved that to the WWF when Vince McMahon was like, hey pal, I want you to be a commentator now, and Randy Savage went to WCW and instantly went back into the main event. He is one of the best ever. After a 1999 return though, when Randy had had a little bit of a break, he did indeed return to wrestling, and well, he had changed his look. Going back to the intro, he did used to have tassels and orange and greens and blues, but now I think he'd been listening to a lot of Limp Bizkit, because he was just dread head to toe in black. And I mean this literally too. Black hat, black pants, black shoes, black everything, and he also returned being majorly jacked, which a lot of people affected his performances. But when people do say that, I will always retort with, but it also landed him a part in the Spider-Man movie, so he must have done something right. If you didn't get this though, it does totally make sense, because this wasn't the Macho Man Randy Savage, this was every single other wrestler at the turn of the millennium that was listening to way much new metal. If I was him, I would have stayed with the, oh my god, what's going on? For one reason or another, he didn't. Number 9, Cody Rhodes. After Brody Lee had battered Cody Rhodes in 2020, Cody did indeed disappear from TV, and when he came back, he had a much more evil, brooding, and darker look, right down to the point he had got rid of his blonde hair, and in its place, it was black. Sadly, what was going on here was lost on a lot of us, and more fool us for not seeing it, because Cody actually admitted in an interview this was inspired by the death of Superman. After Superman is killed, and yes, when he does come back, his look had entirely changed. So we should have appreciated this. We should have appreciated this switch. It was actually damn cool. He also tied this into his work because when he did go back to challenge Brody Lee, he was much more aggressive than ever. And look, anytime anybody wants to tie comic book in with their wrestling gear, I'm gonna sign up. And if you're a fan of Cody Rhodes, go back in the past. He's done this with video games as well. Keep an eye on his boots, and sometimes, you may just see the Triforce. Number 8, Otis. This one is still really weird. Like, Otis is the big brutish heel has been perfectly fine, but it is not a patch on the fun-loving Otis that we all wanted to hug. So what the hell happened? But for whatever reason, WWE decided one day, well, we don't want to portray this version of Otis anymore. We're gonna team him up with Chad Gable, tell everyone that they visit the Alpha Academy, which I think after you graduate means you cut your hair, you shave your beard, and you just completely stop smiling. What a crappy college. This is where it all fell down too, because I am trying to explain this to you, but I do not have the tools to do so. I also think when we are talking about wrestling, and you have a hairy man, you must tie it into a match. You must do hair versus hair, otherwise really you wasting everybody's time. Number 7, Jeff Jarrett. Dubbed the Aztec Warrior look by the internet wrestling community back in 1997, which was there by the way, it was very small and just as angry. When Jeff Jarrett did indeed pop back up in the WWF, it was quite clear he didn't want to be a mid-carder anymore. He wanted to be a main eventer, so he wore this war singlet jacket thing. It did have a touch of the tribal about it though, and also it was absolutely huge. I have no idea how he flew around the world with that thing. And this all went bad when for some reason, Jeff, completely unprompted, starting to cut a real promo on Stone Cold Steve Austin, even though nobody had told him he could. So before long, Jeff Jarrett was back to being good old Double J until he realized, wait a minute, if I just take this guitar and smash it over people's heads, that will probably get a reaction. It did, and the rest, as they say, is history. Number 6, Miro. Yes, when Miro arrived in AEW in 2020, he had bleached blonde hair, and everybody basically stared at their television sets like this. They couldn't believe what they were seeing. What catastrophe was this? Now, if we're being honest, you would never say this to his face because he would break you in two like the pencil that you are. But it is fair to say, after he had turned up in All Elite Wrestling, something just kind of felt amiss. Now, in hindsight, we can figure out what he was trying to do. He was trying to do the exact polar opposite to Rusev, so people wouldn't go, there's the Bulgarian brute, and in that sense, he absolutely succeeded. I think now it's hard to argue though, because after he had absolutely ruined Kip Sabian, he transformed into the Redeemer, which for my money in 2021 is is one of the best professional wrestling characters you could hope to find. But if he told you he wanted to kill a man, you'd totally believe he was about to murder someone right there, right then. And yes, his hair has now gone back to the normal color. So I actually think this was a mark of genius. It has worked out oh so well. Number 5, Hulk Hogan. Hulk Hogan has had such a long career, many people forget this one. But after he turned bad guy and become Hollywood Hulk Hogan, he decided to do something which to this day will never make any sense. He basically started wearing a wig. Either that or the Hulkster had been shaving his head in a very weird way for years, because yeah, all of a sudden he was strutting out on Nitro and he had spiky locks. And I'm sorry, as a bald man, I can tell you, that doesn't just happen. He only spotted this for his feud with Randy Savage, which was equally confusing, because here were two dudes that were very protective about their receding hairlines, when he went, actually no, I'm gonna go back to that weird thing that I do where I wear a bandana and just grow out the back. And really, in a video like this, we should be talking about the fact that he grew black stubble hair, but still had his blonde Fu Manchu, and yet he was able to pull that off. And that, to me, is one of the biggest mysteries like evolution that we have ever happened in the history of mankind. Number 4, the Brothers of Destruction. In 2001, The Undertaker and Kane were a team. It wasn't a one-off or a let's just give it a go. They were going to be a proper partnership, so decided, well, we should have some sort of matching gear. It didn't really work. For one, Kane had stripped down so much we could basically see his body, and yet there was not one burn to witness. So straight away, as the nerd fans were like, well, wait a minute, we were told that Kane was burned. I don't see any of this fire. What a piece of shit. When it came to the American Badass 2, this was like a halfway house between his new character and the dead man. Like, he even had the Undertaker logo on his top, but he never really explained why he started to segue the two. To be honest with you, the whole thing just felt really rushed, including the fact that this logo was red to match the big Red Machine's gear, although at this stage Kane was basically just wearing black. I mean, somebody tell me what was going on here, because I don't get it. Number 3, Dolph Ziggler. Aside from how much he can bump around the ring and sell his ass off, one of the most iconic things about Dolphy Boy Ziggles is the fact he has this crazy blonde hair. Like, if you're flicking through the channels and you see him, you're probably gonna wait a second and go, oh, well, who's this chap? I'll have a look. So when he walked out to fight Evan Bourne in April 2011, everybody was shocked because all of this was gone, and instead he'd done it into this weird short shaved thing, but also it was now the color brown. And I don't want to be horrible to Ziggles, but he kind of looked like the base graphic when you come to create character in WWE 2K. Don't get it wrong, this wasn't Dolphy's fault at all. Management had said, oh, we've got this great idea for you, especially because you're a bad guy, but this was utterly ridiculous. Let's go back to the intro again. One of the first things you have to do when you become a professional wrestler is stand out. He'd done it, and we were actively fighting it. I mean, anybody could have called this, apart from those making the decisions. That's why sometimes you just want to take your head and smash it into a brick wall. Ow. Number 2, Ric Flair. The Nature Boy has done every look imaginable. If you go back far enough, you will see him as this almost overweight bruiser, to the point you won't believe that it's Ric Flair. But then he was involved in a plane crash and he had to drastically drop his weight because of all his injuries, and then he became the Ric Flair we know today. It was quite the transformation. I suppose these days, if I was going to describe him, he'd be a hip-hop granddad, but there was a moment throughout all of this when the Four Horsemen were on top of their game, when Rick decided, well, my hair is quite long right now, why don't I start sporting a really high ponytail? And it was so over the top like everything that Flair did, and again, it didn't last that long, before he did a massive 180 and just took all the hair off of his head. He then left WCW after he had been told he had to be Spartacus. But don't forget, that gave us the 1992 Royal Rumble, so in many ways it was the greatest thing to ever happen in professional wrestling. Number 1, CM Punk. I loved Wolverine CM Punk, coming during his last run with WWE, where clearly Punk was done with the office and didn't care what they had to say. He just started to dress and look however the hell he wanted. It was nice. It's fair to say that nobody knew why he was doing this now, other than he was giving a nod to one of his favorite superheroes. CM Punk had always been passionate about this stuff, but usually when it came to his wrestling character and his wrestling persona, he found a way to tie it all in. This too could be put on management though, because here you had one of their most important assets, and they didn't know what to do with him. No wonder the guy got fed up. I suppose then this look did tie into how he felt at the time. He was worn out medically, he wasn't 100%, and he was just looking for something to put a smile on his face. Still, I will say, I do hope it returns at one point. I mean, who doesn't love Wolverine. Know of any other wrestlers that had bizarre looks at one point in time? Make sure you let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to like the video, share the video, and subscribe. Then you can head over to whatculture.com where you can read articles like this. Oh my gosh, can you believe it? You can come follow us on social media. And look, I tell you once, I tell you 1,000 times, if we step forward, we have a ton of videos. I order you, no I don't, I ask you very nicely to watch them all. Not all, just a large percentage. My name is Simon What Culture. Thank you very much for joining me as always. Make sure you have a good day, make sure you have a good week, make sure you have a good year, make sure you have a good life, and I will see you soon.